It's time to move to Week 6 of the NFL season.
And this one to the books. Dominant performance, 15 in a row in the regular season.
Boom! The TPS team continues to trend in the wrong direction, going just 6-8. But thankfully, we nailed its lock of the week with the Dolphins' emphatic win over the Giants. The Madden simulation edged out our pickers with a 7-7 mark, which has resulted in its second consecutive 500 week. Meanwhile, the world kept its momentum going and posted another pretty good week, going 9-5. So that puts the season standings at TPS 44-34, Madden 35-33, and the world maintaining its first place spot and furthering its lead, moving to an overall record of 55-23. So, with all that being said, that means we had 3 winners in Week 5. First up, we got Thomas the Goat Flanagan, who put Josh Allen at 350-plus passing yards against Jacksonville. Then we got Bench Brooks 8162, who somehow had the foresight that Desmond Ridder was going to have a big day, going for 250-plus passing yards and 1 score through the air and on the ground. And lastly, we got Carter Wolfgang 3110, who had a sharp eye on the Bengals, picking Burrow to go for 300-plus and Chase to snag a touchdown and 100 receiving yards. So hey, big congrats to the winners. But for now, let's move on to Week 6. For some more games and yet another opportunity to earn some TPS bucks. All you gotta do is, number 1, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. Number 2, like this video. And number 3, comment below with your best exact touchdown stat line prediction for Week 5. But with all that out of the way, let's get right into some action. Denver Broncos versus Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City is set to host the Denver Broncos in an AFC West showdown that is fixing to be a mighty one-sided one. You know, at least according to the TPS fans. 94% of the community voted that Kansas City wins this one. The Madden sim, however, is predicting a pretty shocking upset, with Russell Wilson and the Broncos prevailing 28-17. Yeah, our pickers are not buying that though. Look for Kansas City to take this one convincingly by a final score of 31-20. Baltimore Ravens versus Tennessee Titans. Game in London. Back across the pond to London, where the Tennessee Titans, the acting home team, will look to bounce back against a Ravens team that's coming off an equally disappointing Week 5 loss itself. The voters are backing Baltimore by a sizable margin, as 83% took Lamar's squad. But the Madden sim once again zigged, taking Tennessee to win 31-20. Well, our experts think that this will be a bit of a weird one, as many of the international games have always ended up being, but that ultimately John Harbaugh's crew will prevail 17-14. Carolina Panthers versus Miami Dolphins. Miami is fresh off thumping the New York Giants last week and welcoming another potential cupcake in the Carolina Panthers to town. An absolutely insane 97% of the community thinks that Miami will win this one. But the computer has continued its rogue trend, taking Carolina in a barn burner 30-24 thanks to some late-game heroics from Bryce Young and Adam Thielen to force overtime, where Miles Sanders then seals the deal. The TPS pickers are choosing to operate in reality instead, however. As we see it, Carolina is massively overmatched and Miami will have no problem. Our final predictions: Miami 27, Carolina 10. New Orleans Saints versus Houston Texans. After a tough loss to the Falcons on the road, the Texans are headed home to host a Saints team that humiliated the Patriots last week. The fans seem to be fairly split on this one, with 55% of the voters backing New Orleans. And for the first time this week, Madden is actually on the same page as the community, showing a 31-17 Saints win. We think it'll be more of a low-scoring affair though, and that the Texans will ultimately emerge victorious 20-17. Washington Commanders versus Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons are home for the second straight week since their London stinker and looking for another W. They'll welcome a Commanders team to town that is fresh off a thumping at the hands of the lowly Chicago Bears. So the TPS community likes Atlanta in this one, or at the very least, 64% of the voters do. The Madden sim, on the other hand, envisions a 31-10 Commanders W. Well, our pickers are aligned with the community on this one. Atlanta wins another close one, 23-21. I don't know what the heck Madden's thinking. Indianapolis Colts versus Jacksonville Jaguars. Gardner Minshew and the Colts are headed down to Duval to face a Jaguars team fresh off 2 wins during their London residency. The computer picking Jacksonville to win this by a final score of 24-10. Well, this time, our experts are actually more in sync with Madden, as we see the Jags taking this one too, but instead by a final of 24-14. Seattle Seahawks versus Cincinnati Bengals. Well, Seattle's coming off an early season bye and headed to Cincy to face Joe Burrow and a revitalized-looking Bengals team. The public seems to think that last week could have been a fluke for the Bengals, as 60% of the voters were in favor of Seattle. The computer, however, thinks that Cincy is all the way back and will roll to an easy 24-3 win. And you know, our experts are also backing Cincinnati here. But we think it'll be a much closer game than that. Gino and Joe go back and forth all afternoon, but the Bengals emerge victorious in a close 28-24 game. Minnesota Vikings versus Chicago Bears. Chicago is coming off its first win in what must feel like a lifetime to the people in and around the organization, and now they're getting ready to host a banged-up Minnesota Vikings team. The community, for some reason, doesn't seem super fazed by the injury to Justin Jefferson, which is kind of puzzling considering he's been the bulk of the Vikings offense for the past couple of seasons. But 78% of the votes came in for Minnie, and the Madden Sim seems to agree, picking the Vikings to win this one at 20-7. Well, our TPS experts, on the other hand, think that Chicago wins a tight one on the strength of another quality showing from Justin Fields. Final score, Chicago 31, Minnesota 30. San Francisco 49ers versus Cleveland Browns. San Francisco has the deck stacked against it as the Niners look to stay scorching hot this week against a Cleveland Browns team on their home turf and coming off a bye. Well, 94% of the TPS community isn't too concerned about that adversity, perhaps believing that Deshaun Watson may miss his second consecutive week, or maybe they just think that the 49ers are that much better than Cleveland. Madden thinks that the Browns will do the unthinkable and somehow upset San Fran 21-14, despite missing a potential game-winning field goal at the end of regulation with the game tied. Our pickers think that Cleveland will be surprisingly competitive, but ultimately are going to be outmatched, as we're seeing San Francisco take this one by a final score of 14-10. New England Patriots versus Las Vegas Raiders. After getting humiliated by the Saints, Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots now need to pick themselves up by their bootstraps and ship out to Las Vegas to face his former mentee Josh McDaniels and a Raiders team that secured a crucial win against the Packers on Monday Night Football this week. The public has seemingly had enough of Mac Jones and that horrid Pats offense, as 82% of the votes came in backing Las Vegas here. The Madden Sim showed a convincing Raiders victory as well, as Vegas took it 31-7 with very little issue. Well, our pickers, on the other hand, just can't seem to quit the Patriots. New England finds a way to play competent football yet again and win this one by a final score of 24-20. Detroit Lions versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay is coming off an early bye week and will be well rested at home as the new-look Lions come to town eager to keep their momentum going. The TPSers are all over the Lions in this one, with 87% of the voters picking Detroit to emerge victoriously, which, you know, after watching the way they absolutely dominated the Panthers last week, is pretty understandable. The Madden simulation showed an exciting game, with the teams going back and forth, but Detroit outlasting Baker and the Buccaneers, ultimately winning by a final score of 34-22. The TPS pickers envision something very similar happening, letting Detroit edge out Tampa Bay in this one 30-28. Arizona Cardinals versus Los Angeles Rams. The Los Angeles Rams are set to play Jonathan Gannon's scrappy young Cardinals team at SoFi on Sunday, with both teams needing wins to remain relevant in the NFC's competitive playoff picture. The Cardinals have looked surprisingly solid all year, but the TPS fans think that Sean McVay has his team ready to play after that loss to Philly, with 88% of the community taking Los Angeles in this one. And yeah, the Madden simulation seems to agree here, showing a low-scoring Rams win by a final score of 16-8. Well, our pickers are getting in line on this one, and we have a consensus pick. We think that Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp have themselves an afternoon, connecting for a couple of scores en route to a relatively stress-free 21-7 win. Philadelphia Eagles versus New York Jets. The New York Jets may have saved their season last week, knocking off the Broncos on the road, but they'll have a much steeper hill to climb in Week 6 as they welcome the Eagles to the Meadowlands. 90% of the TPSers think that Zach Wilson falls back into his old ways and that the Eagles take care of business on the road. But the Madden simulation shows otherwise, with a surprisingly convincing Jets win 27-13. Well, the TPS experts are siding with the community and the Eagles, as Philly is just way too well-rounded to get bested by a New York team that still needs everything to go right on the offensive side of the ball for them to score enough to be competitive. Our final prediction, Eagles 27, Jets 3. New York Giants versus Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills have had enough of the abroad life and are headed back home to Highmark Stadium to host a New York Giants team that's looking worse and worse with each passing week. The community doesn't seem to think that the Giants have a snowball's chance, as 95% of the votes came in favor of the Bills. And somewhat unsurprisingly, we have yet another consensus pick, as Madden predicted a 41-6 Bills thrashing of their in-state rivals. And yep, our pickers are right behind them, taking the Bills to win 35-9. In fact, we are so sure about this one, we're making it our lock of the week. Dallas Cowboys versus Los Angeles Chargers. Last but not least, we have our Monday Night Football matchup. The Dallas Cowboys are headed to the City of Angels and looking to get back on track against the Chargers after getting ravaged by San Francisco last week. The public seems to be fairly split on this one, with a slight preference towards the Chargers, as 52% of the voters picked LA. The Madden Sim, on the other hand, likes Jerry's Cowboys to take it by a final score of 24-21, with the game being iced by Tony Pollard and the Dallas run game. Well, the TPS experts aren't really buying that. Justin Herbert seems to be rounding into form, and as long as Brandon Staley can avoid shooting himself and the rest of his squad in the foot with all his boneheaded decision-making, well, then LA should cruise against an overrated Cowboys team. Final score, LA 33, Dallas 23. And there you have it. So, don't forget to subscribe and like the video, then add your own bold prediction down below for a chance to win some awesome prizes. And be sure to vote on next week's game starting Sunday night in our community section. Then, tune in next week to see if you won.